Our guests this episode, two longtime FLAP group members, Ryan Walsh and Christine Jackson. Thank you both for joining us. Issue 1, a public school teacher in Virginia was fired this month after refusing to use a transgender student's preferred pronoun. By a vote of 5-0, the school board voted to dismiss teacher Peter Vlaming, noting that his actions were not only discriminatory, but also a form of harassment. Vlaming was told a number of times to use the student's preferred pronoun, and while he agreed to use the student's new name, he asserted that addressing the 9th grade student by his preferred male pronoun was against his religious beliefs. Cindy, did the school make the right call here, and what should be the policies of our local school boards when it comes to this issue?
They made the right call because they had told him repeatedly not to do that. So, and he chose to go against the school rules. So, yeah, they did the right thing.
Ryan?
Yeah, they absolutely did the right thing. He was told and he ignored it.
Christine?
Not quite sure. From what I've read, they did not have a policy specifically addressing the use of pronouns in students. So I think that's a little bit open up for discussion a bit.
Michael?
You know, if they told them, if they forewarned them, even verbally, I mean, sometimes you got to live and let live, and not die on the sword of so-called religious freedom.
So, but that's an issue, is religious freedom. Was he discriminating against this student by just declining to refer to this student by their preferred pronoun, which was not their biological gender?
He was making a point. That's the thing. That when you do something like that, when you go out of your way to manipulate the pronoun like that, especially where he was calling the student by what they had adopted as their name, when you go out of your way to sort of modify the pronoun like that, and maybe maybe you're speaking some tortured sentences in doing so, that's showing that you're trying to make a point. You're trying to either needle people or make a point. That's where I just say, come on.
I think if he just casually referred to her, not meaning to, that would have been different. Mm-hmm. But he was purposely not doing it, and it's like, and at this point, it's she's a boy, he's a boy, so it's like, what's the point? You're gonna call him by his name, just call him him.
And yeah, just speaking of his name, I mean, the whole, it's against my religion. I mean, first of all, unless your job is in a religious, setting, leave the religion at home. Leave the politics at home, whether you're an office worker, teacher, or whatever, leave it at home. And also, if you're going to say the new name, which is a masculine name, but not use the pronoun he, it rings false to me. If you're going to then fall back on, it's against my religion, so the slight difference between the masculine name and the pronoun, like that's where you're going to draw that line. It rings hypocritical to me, I think.
Well, I agree with you. If he's making a point and specifically misgendering someone, you're right. I would absolutely agree with you. But from what I've read, and I've read a couple of different sources, to say this misgendering was more of an accidental thing. Yeah. And he didn't misgender him or the student directly. He directed other people referring to the student. And I believe the student was wearing a virtual reality headset and was about to walk into a wall, and he said to someone in the hall, don't let her walk into a wall. And it wasn't directed right at the student, but it was referring to her. So, and I can understand that.
That could have been just a quick reaction on his part.
Yes, or just like a slip of the tongue.
Because he had the student the year before.
Yes, exactly. So,
when she was a female.
Yes, so 2.5 months into the school year, the student is now living as male. So I can kind of understand, if he accidentally may have called that student she, accidentally, yes, but if it was a repeated thing, and I hadn't heard that it was repeatedly being done. But
if he said it as a defense, if it's against my religion, so he said, well, I'm extending the olive branch where I will refer to this student by their new name, but just for my religious principles, I am not going to actively say that pronoun, that preferred pronoun, which is opposite of their biological gender, from a religious perspective. Do we go down a slippery slope when we force people to say things? Because now we're saying we're forcing him to use to use a pronoun rather than just call the student by their name? Is that a slippery slope?
I don't think so. I mean, it's learned behavior, and again, for me at least, it goes back to leave it at home, leave religion at home. And I think in this case, especially in a school setting where the teachers, their main job is to educate and to help these students develop and grow. If, like Michael was saying, if you are going out of your way to only use the student's name, it's going to make them feel singled out. It's going to make them feel harassed and discriminated against, and that's going to affect their ability to learn and their ability to do things. She, he, make the switch. Just make the switch.
How about let's take it a step further. How about those that consider themselves non-binary and want a pronoun of they, or they consider themselves they're not male, they're not female, they're everything. Do we accommodate all of this and force teachers, regardless of their own values, their own religious principles, to sign on to that?
Well, you could just call the student by name.
Which was what he was doing.
Right.
But at the same time, but if that's the case, okay, if it's this whole, well, geez, it's really hard to do, it's really hard to keep it straight. Well, he wouldn't have put that as an affirmative defense, though, in front of the school board to say, well, my religion this, my religion that. Well, why are you bringing that up? Well, so if your defense is, look, I'm accidentally doing it, I'm sorry, it's really hard to do, such as someone, gender fluid, I'd have a hard time. I'm tongue-tied as it is. I'd have a heck of a time trying to come up with how to address a pronoun. But again, I'd stick with calling the person by their name. But if I accidentally slip and assign them a gender pronoun, well, yeah, that's the defense. I'm like, geez, I'm sorry. I just was tongue-tied. But that's not what he said. He went out of his way to say
it's a religious defense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what.
So to you, the religious defense does not hold water in the workplace. Does religious defense hold water for you?
I don't think so.
So everyone's in agreement on this one.
Yeah.
Huh.
Wow.
I know.
You weren't predicting that, were you?
I certainly was not. So color me happily shocked.
All right. Well, everyone agreeing is boring. So issue 2, the Democrats took control of the U.S. House. A lot of those progressives, a lot of those Democrats ran on a platform of Medicare for all. They're setting their eyes on the Senate and the White House for 2020. If they control it all, should they make universal single-payer health care a central theme in their platform? Is this country ready to join the rest of the industrialized world in making access to health care a fundamental right? Ryan?
So that's sort of and I'll try to keep this brief. Yes, they should. And I would also add that they can't just say, oh, we're all for it. They have to actually have a plan of how to implement it that's going to make sense to people. 70% of Americans are on board with it, 85% Democrats, 52% of Republicans even are on board with single payer of some form. And I think that definitely needs to be a part of their platform if they want to start actually winning.
Christine?
I don't think it should be part of their platform. I don't believe that single-payer healthcare or healthcare generally is right. And since our government sucks at everything that they do, I don't see the U.S. being able to pull it off. And very few countries pull off successfully. I mean, a lot of countries do it, and some have good points, and some have massive failures. Do I trust that our government is going to do it and do it well? No, I don't.
Michael?
I don't know, I'm not going to automatically demonize the government. I mean, Medicare, you ask seniors how Medicare is working, and almost unanimously they say yes, it's working great. Okay, it has its faults, it has its flaws, and it has its gaps in coverage. But overall, Medicare is a preferred, is a preferred system to what we have now. This hodgepodge of everything going on. I mean, in terms of making it a platform, it's all how you pitch things. I mean, the Democratic Party has shown over the last 20 years that they really stink at pitching stuff and marketing stuff, okay? That's the thing, okay? Because it's very, very easy for the opposition to start screaming, they're gonna raise your taxes, they're gonna raise your taxes. And you know what? Technically, they're right, because there would be a raise. But I'll tell you something. For those of you who work for a company, okay, as to what the real cost of your health insurance is. It's not the cost that you're actually paying, but the cost your employer pays that filters down to you. As self-employed, I can tell you what the real cost of health insurance is, and it's staggering. And if somebody gave me the tax increase that I would have to pay to fund single payer is a fraction of what I am really paying now. Okay, so if the equation is set out for people, it can be sold. But again, I have no faith in the Democratic Party today being able to pitch it.
Cindy.
I don't either, and that's why I hope that they do make it their platform, because I think they'll lose with
Miss
it.
Independent.
So I
Yeah,
want,
both sides.
I'm still for Trump in 2020 as of right now. So I have no desire to see the Democrats win. So I hope you do take single payer and make that your platform. Don't tell anybody how you're going to implement it. Just tell them you're going to raise the taxes, and we'll see you then.
Yeah. We'll just have Mexico pay for it.
Yep.
Michael.
Boy,
Michael.
geez, that's really
Michael.
what?
Michael, let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
Do you really believe that if we implement a single-payer healthcare system, okay, the workers are going to be taxed? Do you really believe that the money that the companies save by not having to provide health care, they're going to pass that down to their workers? Do you really believe that?
Why are you using the Republican trick of trying to ask me a question that I wasn't answering? I didn't say that. I said our question was the question was marketing. The question was whether you were able to market in terms of the cost, okay? Now, believe me, you want to make the minimum wage arguments that you make, okay, and all those other types of things. That ties into to what you're talking about, okay? How you support the minimum wage because you say, well, the companies are not going to pass the same on the consumer and all that, so you might as well raise the minimum wage. It's the same argument. It's the same argument.
Okay, so if you're going to raise taxes on the workers to give them single-payer health care, the money that the company's saving is not going to be passed down to the workers.
Right,
you know
but
that.
if you
Yeah,
raise
they
the
end up costing the
taxes
taxpayers.
and the workers don't have to pay out of pocket, they don't have to pay deductibles, they don't have to pay premiums, they don't have to pay this, that, and the other thing, then yes, their paycheck may be smaller compared to how it is now, but that money can go further because they don't have to worry about critical care. They don't have to worry about pushing off their yearly physicals and then letting it until they have to go to the ER because they have no other option. They don't have the money at that time to pay for their medication, for their primary care, for their specialty care. So you talk about the taxes being raised and the employers, not passing. I mean, you're right, they wouldn't. But I think if it's designed correctly and if it's pitched well, in the long run, like Michael was saying, people will save money on their healthcare costs.
Well, you tax the corporations instead of the people is what you do, and that's how you pay for it.
I'm okay with that too.
Christine, you say the government sucks at everything.
They do.
Have you ever met a senior citizen that said, please take away my Medicare and let's privatize it, let me buy private insurance
My
instead?
father, actually.
He doesn't want Medicare?
Oh, well, he passed away some years ago. His medication, when he was on chemotherapy, was $600 a month. He could not afford that. He called his doctor. His doctor had negotiated with the insurance company and said, you give him that medication, you cover it, or I will admit him to the hospital, and you have to cover that. So it is all about the negotiating power. So we don't have a lot of negotiating power because it's been regulated. The government stepped in and regulated it for us. And that is why the costs are so high, administrative costs are so high, the pharmaceutical costs are so high. We can go on and on about why the pharmaceutical costs are so high. Some of them is legitimately a legit cost, but we don't have the negotiating power that other countries do. And if we did have that, we would be able to get the lower cost of our pharmaceuticals, and that would right there, if you remove the government, your costs would automatically go.
What other countries have that negotiating power?
Germany, Britain.
But they have single-payer health care.
Yes, they do, because they have the negotiating power to get the lower pharmaceutical costs.
Our insurance companies, our entire healthcare system is for profit, and there's not enough competition. Not that I think in this particular instance, competition would necessarily actually lower the cost all that much, but it's all for profit. It's all because there's not I mean,
Well, they are providing a service.
yes, they are providing a service,
And that
I'm not saying-
service, but that service, look, how long does a doctor have to train? How long does it take it takes, how many years to get a pharmaceutical to market? It's 1 in 5,000 drugs that actually make it to market. The failure rate is incredibly high. The competition is fierce in pharmaceuticals. It is incredibly fierce.
maybe in
because-
pharmaceuticals, but not in insurance companies, and they can pick and choose, and they can deny you on any little thing that they want. I've worked in a hospital, and I've dealt with insurance companies trying to get people their chemotherapy care, their X-rays, and I have called them up, sat on the line for an hour with a nurse who's only doing her job, requests, I need this, I need this, I need this, I need to send you to a doctor. It comes back a week later, and we'll cover 50% of it, because that's all we want to cover. That's all we are going to justify covering. And it's because they can make more money that way. And we have the patients have no choice. It's that or nothing. It's that or die. I mean,
Well, in a single payer system, the government is going to try to save as much money as possible, and that means saving money means less care. I mean, they are not going to give you all the tests that you need and give you the wonderful care. You're not going to get the experimental treatments that are widely available.
Especially as you age.
Exactly, and especially with, I know Britain had recently passed they had passed the right to die bill, but they won't pass the right to try bill. Okay, I mean, so that tells you right there, this is not something that is meant to care for people. It is meant to just, it's not about, spending the necessary money. Right now, I have the freedom to pick the plan that I want, and I have the incentive to make my own decisions. And I think if we're going to dump a ton of money into something, we need to dump it into something like our education system.
And there's a lot of things that we haven't even done to help the healthcare and the healthcare situation. Opening up state lines, the competition across state lines, tort reform. There's a lot of things that
Right.
can be done. When you talk about
It's a
Medicare for
Trump
all,
playbook, come
but
on,
when
come
you talk
on,
about
come on.
Medicare
Look,
for all, you still
anecdotally-
have to supplement it. You're still paying for
Tort
something.
reform, that'll get the attorney going. There we go.
Anecdotally, you're
Here we
talking
go.
about these isolated instances in foreign countries. You hear these horror stories. We have plenty of horror stories here. I'm just saying, anecdotally, go to Britain, go to Canada. They're not dying. They're not dropping dead in the streets.
No, but
okay?
they're not getting the care. They're coming here to get the care.
No,
I've got friends in Canada
isolated
that say
instances.
they wait months for appointments with doctors. It's not
isolated
that
I
way.
have
instances
friends that
reported
have
by
gone to the
conservative
UK
publications.
And at
and said they
50%
received
tax
a
rate?
much
No,
better
I'm all
care than
set.
they ever got here.
I know a lot of people
So-
that still live in the French Hill section of Leominster that still maintain that Canadian citizenship, so they can go up to Canada to get the health care that they need.
Yeah, and they're not doing it, just for giggles. Like, they're not taking a trip to Montreal to go to La Cage aux Sports with dancing chicken. That's a different story for a different time. But I mean, there's a reason for it. There's a reason that people do this, and that they go and they can get cheaper. Medicine from Canada.
But everybody's going to be paying more, almost double your taxes. So how is it cheaper? Nobody's getting anything for free. The people who work
Cindy,
and pay taxes are paying for this.
Someone breaks into your house, you call the police, the government
Yes.
police.
Yes.
Your house catches on fire, you call the fire department.
I'm not.
Fire department.
If my
If
house
someone
catches
goes-
on fire, it's burnt because I live so far from a fire department or a police station. I'm not
I
relying
don't
on
hear
them.
anyone saying we should privatize police departments, we should privatize.
I'm not asking for that. That's public safety.
Well, maybe we should privatize
And health
the
is
fire
not part of
department.
public safety?
Why should illness and sickness
I
be
would like
profitable?
to see us
why-
do
if
it's-
other things to reduce the cost first.
Exactly. I think there's just easier
The government has to,
steps.
they have to give me a plan to tell me, if you're going to tax me double my tax rate, which most of these countries are paying 50% payroll taxes to pay for this. If you're going to double my tax rate,
50%.
Joe Plumber in Germany is paying 50% payroll tax?
yeah.
No, they're
Yeah,
not.
France is almost at 50% right now. Why do you
They're
think they're boycotting in the streets?
My
Well, that has
blue
nothing to
collar
do with-
relatives in Italy are not paying 50% payroll tax. That's a myth. It's a myth. And this is exactly what you Trump people are going to do if we try to
I'm
implement
going to
this
post
stuff.
a list of all the country's tax
And you're going to
rates,
scream
and
it
you will
louder,
see.
and you're going to win
And-
because
and
my
then-
people
You will
are a
see.
bunch of lily-livered little weasels that can't stand up for
The
themselves.
Democrats, all they like to do is spend my money.
Yeah,
Well,
right?
She's gonna
So
keep
that-
doing
and
that.
that's
The one who
what it
wants
is.
$5 billion
Right,
for a
for a
wall that
wall
someone
is
can
talking
fly
about-
over
I'm
and
not
swim
asking
around,
for $5
right?
billion. I want border control.
Yeah, there's
I
another
don't
shot
say
for
a
that.
wall or
We
what.
want $5 billion for a wall, and we're the ones that
Well,
want
if
to
you're saying
spend.
if we have to subsidize birth control because some women can't afford it, so how are they going to afford higher taxes?
Yeah.
And a lot of people I hear, even the millennials who say
We'll be paying for it.
the baby boom.
Birth control is going to cost you a hell of a lot less than a child that you have to
Yeah.
put through public schools, and you have to give food stamps and everything else for an unwanted child for a
Right.
woman who can't afford it.
Well, then
And
maybe
they-
they should get sterilized.
Wow.
You can't afford to have kids.
Issue
don't-
3.
Don't have them.
Issue.
Moving on.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Issue 3.
I'm only kidding,
us.
really. But
Democrats.
honestly, don't have kids you can't afford to take care of. I knew I'd make you laugh today.
Well, and the point you made about the fire.
Yeah. Issue 3. Democrats made significant gains in the midterm.
I just channeled Sophia there.
Retaking
Hi,
the
Sophia.
House and flipping multiple governor and state legislators. All right, Democrats had real good midterms. Many believe the midterms were a referendum on Donald Trump, and if it was not a favorable one for him. Now, as the Mueller investigation kicks into high gear, and more dominoes fall, and more of his associates are going to jail every day. What happens if Trump himself is implicated and the Democratic-controlled House impeaches him? Do Republicans in the Senate circle the wagons and take the risk of protecting him by voting to acquit? Or do the results of the midterm mean that those senators would be more likely to throw Trump under the bus, believing the 2020 congressional elections may be more favorable to them with Pence or another Republican leading the ticket? Midterms plus Mueller. What does this mean for Trump? Christine.
I've been hearing impeachment since 2016. I don't buy it. I'll believe it when I see it. And to think that, I don't know, is it the enemy you know? We know what we're getting with Trump. He's batshit, crazy. Sorry. But Pence is, I think, considerably worse off with Pence.
Michael?
I mean, I do agree with Christine in that I don't see the man getting impeached. I don't see, I was picking on the spineless Democrats in the last segment. I'll pick on the spineless Republicans. Okay, they're not going to stand up to the guy. They made their bed. They're going to lie in it, and then we're going to see what happens in 2020. Will the Democrats, choke again, and in terms of what they put up as a presidential candidate? Well, that's what they're banking on. I don't see this guy getting impeached, and if he is technically impeached, which impeached is another word for indicted by the House of Representatives, he's not going to get removed by 2/3 of the Senate. That's just not going to happen. And
look at with Bill Clinton when they were chanting to impeach him, and that hurt the Republicans. So it could backfire on them as well. So I don't see it happening. I really don't.
Ryan?
Yeah, I agree that, he might get impeached, but nothing's going to happen. I think the Republicans, honestly, it'll be split. I think some of them will defend him to their dying breath. I think some of them are just going to be like, oh, no, you're finally too much. And I agree, Chris. I think Pence is much worse for everybody involved.
So from a policy perspective, even if it's not impeachment, even if we're not talking about an impeachment trial, from a policy perspective, when these Republicans, if you look at that congressional map, that Senate map, that what's up in 2020, a third of those seats, when those Republicans are up for re-election in those purple states, look at the results of the 2020 midterm. Are they more likely or less likely to go along with Trump on policy initiatives and defending him on some of his behavior? More likely or less likely to defend him than we saw in the past 2 years?
I think in general they're probably going to continue to bow down to their leader. It's working for them so far in a lot of ways, and I don't think many of them see any particular reason to change. I don't think any of them feel like it's going to cost to continue to defend him necessarily, even in the purple states. If you look at how close a couple of the sort of recent special elections were, despite candidates, potentially suppressing the vote, and things that they said in public that you had people who were kind of up in arms, oh, you can't say that. it didn't really affect them in the long run because they were able to rile up their base enough to come out in droves, and I think that it could happen again, and that the hardcore conservatives and the people who, better read than dead kind of people are going to could come out and be like, oh, we don't care what you did. We don't want a Democrat, and they'll just come and, yay Trump, he's our man, rah, rah, rah. I don't know. I think that's what's going to happen.
So we had Jeff Flake, who was the anti-Trumper in the Senate. But he still has a long political career ahead of him. So he's, you saw him hedging a lot of his bets back and forth, a lot of vacillation. Going forward, starting in January, you have Mitt Romney coming in there. Is Mitt Romney going to lead a coalition of Republicans to stand up to Donald Trump? What do you think?
No.
No?
No. I mean, I think if Nevada voters were more than willing to vote for a dead pimp than a Democrat,
Yeah.
it's time. The Democrats really have to sort of, I guess, tone it down a bit. I guess get away from the Bernie Sanders, the Bernie bots, and go to a more, I guess, go a little bit more in the compromise. And that's how I think the Democrats will be a lot more successful.
I think that this is one case where I might be the lone voice. I don't think that they can play centrist anymore. I think that millennials like myself who are getting ready to vote and who are paying attention to what's going on, they want more Bernie types. They want more progressive people. And as they get older and as they vote and pay more attention, I mean, most of my friends are pretty far to the left even of me. They don't want compromise. They don't want centrists. They don't want spineless Democrats who are going to toe the party line and continue to play the same game that they've been playing and losing for the past 15, 20 years. They don't want that, and they're not going to vote for that.
Well, I was a Democrat. I did. I have been.
You
I've been a Democrat before as well.
So have I. I mean, but when I saw
When
the
I was
part,
in diapers. Okay, go ahead.
but when I saw you're racist here, this is racist, that's racist, you're white supremacist, this and the other thing. It's like, no. I mean, the Democratic Party used to be, the Democratic Party used to be about the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It used to be the fun party, You could,
And you impeached him over that.
I didn't impeach him. I did not care what the man
supported
did.
Bill Clinton back then.
I did too, and I have voted for Obama twice. I did not care what Bill Clinton did. I cared how he broke the law. That is my only problem. But now, I mean, the Democrats did have a reasonable, immigration control policies. They cared about what the middle class, thoughts and concerns were. Now it seems to be pandering to a small subsection of very highly offended people.
Well, Ryan, what you're describing, we've been there before. Back in the late '60s, the Flower Children, the hippies, Woodstock, a very engaged generation, a very progressive, liberal generation that says, you know what, we're going to vote, we're going to take control, and we want to go left. So what happened? They took control. They gave it to George McGovern. How did he do? He lost 49 states. 49 states he lost.
Well,
you're not going to win with the work.
time.
You're not going to. But you learn from history. You're going to.
Yeah, okay.
You're not going to win the Electoral College without getting those working class voters in Ohio and Michigan and Pennsylvania and Virginia.
I mean, okay.
And you're not going to get them with Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Or Alexandria, whatever her name
Oh,
is.
good.
So,
I hope
yes,
she never
the
changes.
Democrats used to be much more of a big tent group, and they could appeal and do policy for the middle class, for blue-collar workers, for minorities. They used to be able to get and keep all those people.
You just said a contradiction, though. Okay? Big tent. You just said all your friends, they're going to either get their way, no
Thank
compromise,
you both for
stay
joining
home.
us. We're out of time. Bye-bye.